Hi everyone, it's Victoria Strong here with the Sewing Hub. I'm so excited today to be walking you through how to sew the beautiful River pattern by Simple Life Pattern Company. It's known for being super versatile and stylish at the same time, and I'm so excited that we get to do this together. A huge thank you to our fabric sponsor, the Fabric Snob, for providing all of the fabric in this video that I used to make the River dress today. So a huge thank you to them. If you haven't already joined the amazing sewing community on Facebook, the Sewing Hub, definitely give that a follow. Follow us on YouTube and on Instagram also. And that way you will be able to stay up to date with any new tutorials or blogs or videos so you can learn with our amazingly supportive community. All right, let's get started making the River pattern.
First, let's gather all the materials. For this pattern, you'll need knit fabric with at least 75% stretch for the sweater or hoodie part. For this, you could use cotton lycra, polyester spandex, athletic knits, or something with a good amount of structure. Thanks to the generous sponsorship of the Fabric Snob, I'll be using the Storm French Terry from their Luxe French Terry line. This cotton French Terry is made up of 90% cotton and 5% spandex, and it's 250 GSM. It has 4-way stretch, 50% horizontal, and 25% vertical. For the skirt part of your River dress, if you're making that option, you can use pretty much anything you have on hand, but don't pick anything too heavy or it will weigh down the sweater. I'll be using this honeydew cotton lycra from the Fabric Snob's Luxe Jersey line that's kind of a pastel sage. The Fabric Snob's Luxe Jersey line is made up of 95% cotton and 5% spandex. It's 230 GSM or 12 ounces, which is a great weight for what we're going to use it for here. It has 75 vertical stretch and 100% horizontal stretch. I'll also be using this peony cotton spandex from the same line and this textured cotton spandex that I found in my stash. You'll also need a grid ruler, scissors and/or a rotary cutter, an erasable fabric pen like this friction pen, some pins, and depending on the version you're making, you may also need some elastic. Let's cut out our fabric. For this pattern, the pattern pieces you will need will depend on the version of River that you're making. Today I'm making the cropped sweater dress version, so I'm cutting a front bodice, a back bodice, 2 long sleeves, 2 cuffs, a neckband, a waistband, 2 tier 1 pieces, 3 tier 2 pieces, and 4 tier 3 pieces. This River sewing pattern is one of my favorites right now. It's a dress, it's a sweater, it's a hoodie, and it even has a cute crop top option. The long sweater is perfect for everyday wear, whether you're just chilling at home or heading out for errands. And if you're into layering, the crop top is super flattering and hits right at the waist. Looks amazing with high-waisted jeans or over a tee. It comes in adult sizes as well as child sizes, and you can totally make this pattern your own. You want a hood or maybe just a neckband. You can even add a dress on the bottom of the sweater for the layered look without all the bulk. The pattern is super user-friendly too. There's an A0 file for large format printing, a projector-friendly version, and no trim pages. So no cutting and trimming, just print, tape, and go. The River pattern paired with the amazing Luxe French Terry and Luxe Jersey from the Fabric Snob is honestly a match made in heaven. The French Terry, it has this beautiful soft feel with just the right amount of stretch, making it perfect for comfy pieces like sweaters and hoodies. It drapes really nicely, but still holds its shape, which is exactly what you want for something like the River sweater. As for the Luxe Jersey, it's lightweight, silky smooth, and perfect for layering pieces or tees. I could see this fabric working for so many different types of garments. It's super breathable and soft against the skin, which is always a win. If you're looking for fabrics that are both luxe and practical, I can't recommend them enough. Oh, and as you can see, I'm using a projector to cut out my pattern pieces for this project. If you've never used one before, it is such a game changer. No paper, no taping, just project the pattern directly onto your fabric and cut it. If you're curious about how it works or thinking about giving it a try, I would be happy to help answer any questions. There's also an amazing Facebook group called Projectors for Sewing that I highly recommend. It's full of tips, tutorials, and support for anyone new to using a projector in their sewing. Definitely check it out if you want to learn more. If you love this tutorial and you want to see more, make sure you're following along on all of the socials for the Sewing Hub. If you love the fabrics I used in this project, definitely give the Fabric Snob a follow on Instagram and Facebook to see more of their amazing fabric selections. If you're part of the Sewing Hub already, don't forget to stay connected with us there. It's such a great place for sewing tips, inspiration, and challenges. And of course, follow Simple Life Patterns on all the platforms for more sewing tutorials, pattern releases, and fun sewing content. I'll link everything below, so be sure to check them out and stay in the loop with all the fun stuff happening. Okay, let's start with the bodice. Lay your back piece down right side up and place the front piece on top, right sides together, aligning the shoulder seams. Now, pin and sew or serge those seams.
Instead of adding a pocket today, I thought it would be really fun to go over how to use chenille bias tape as an applique. If you don't know what chenille bias is, it's basically a strip of woven fabric that's cut on the bias, which means it's cut diagonally kind of across the grain of the fabric. I bought the chenille from somewhere online. Looks like this. It's easy to make it yourself. I mean, this just looks like it's a piece of linen that's been cut on the bias. You can see how the grains kind of go in a diagonal there. It's not focusing very well, but I think you can still see it. That just gives it like the flexibility and stretch so it can nicely go around those curves without puckering. And any edges that you have, like it's not going to pucker. You can put it around curves on the edge of a quilt or a bag, or use it as a decoration like we are going to today. So when it's washed, it frays on the edges and becomes like a fluffy texture. So it's a really popular choice for like decorative edging, again on quilts. I see it all the time on quilts or pillows, or I don't know even what else I've seen it on, but it's a really unique kind of texture to add, and I'm really excited to show you how to use it. So let's go.
To applique with chenille bias, start by drawing your desired design on your fabric with an erasable fabric pen. I made a quick guide with a piece of paper to make a rainbow shape on my bodice. Now we'll cut the chenille bias strips to the desired length and shape. Now we need to position the strips on our drawn design and pin them in place. I'm finding the center of my strips and lining them up with the center of my bodice. Then I'm going to pin them all the way down on each side to keep them in place. With coordinating thread, use a short length straight stitch. Since I'm putting the bias on a stretchy fabric, I'm going to use a triple stitch. And we're going to sew along the center of the chenille bias, securing it to the base fabric. Be sure not to stretch the bias or the base fabric for best results. I'm going to repeat that for every strip that I have in my rainbow. And there you have it. This is such an easy way to add some texture and interest to your sewing projects. Now that our design is finished, let's attach the sleeves. Open up your bodice with the right side facing up. Mark the center of your sleeve with a pin. Align the pin with the shoulder seam, right sides together, and start pinning the sleeve to the arm sky. The arm sky may need to stretch a little bit to accommodate the sleeve, so just make sure that this happens toward the top of the sleeve. Once everything is pinned in place, sew or serge along the sleeve curve, and repeat this process with the other side. This is where I like to take a quick peek to see what my bodice is going to look like. Now, with our sleeves attached, let's continue constructing our bodice. So we're going to put our bodice right sides together, aligning the side seams. Now we're going to match up those arm sky seams, and we are going to pin from the bottom of the bodice all the way to the bottom of the sleeve. Sew or serge along the side seam from the bottom hem to the sleeve hem on both sides. If you have added pockets, make sure you sew through all of the layers. And now here's what your river should look like. It's starting to look like a sweater dress. If you're adding a hood, this is the time to add it, so start preparing your hood the way the pattern recommends. Today, I'm doing a neckband instead of a hood, so I'm going to take my neckband and fold it in half widthwise, right sides together, matching up those short ends. Then I'm gonna pin and sew with a stretch stitch or serge. Here's a pro tip. You can fold this in half this way and serge it down the side. This will prevent you from having to fold the neckband again after you serge. Sewing your neckband this way also helps keep it from sliding around after you've folded it lengthwise. Super helpful tip. Okay, let's attach our neckband to our bodice. The first thing we need to do is find our quarter points. So I'm matching up the shoulder seams here, and I'm going to fold it in half and pin on those folds. Those are going to be my half points. That's the front bodice, and we'll put a pin in the back bodice. Now I'm going to match up those pins, folding the neckline in half again, and find my quarter points. Note that the quarter points are very rarely the shoulder seams, so be wary of that when you are attaching your neckbands. Now we're going to take our neckband and do the exact same thing. We are going to find our quarter points on our neckband so that we can match them up with the quarter points on our bodice to make sure that we stretch evenly when we attach the neckband. Now we need to use either a stretch stitch or a serger to attach our neckband. You want to make sure that you are pulling the neckband so that it is taut with the neckline, but not so tight that you're stretching the neckline, because that's how you're going to get puckers. So to reiterate, we are stretching the neckband, but not the neckline. Here I like to tie a knot to make sure that my serger ends, my serger tails are not going to come undone and it's not going to start unraveling. Okay, let's prepare our cuffs. We're going to take one of our cuffs and we're going to fold it in half widthwise once again and pin it in place. We can do the same trick that we did with our neckband, where we fold it in half again and serge that way. There we go, and make sure you repeat this step with the other cuff. Okay, let's attach our cuffs. We are going to insert the cuff into the sleeve, aligning the raw edges of the cuff with the sleeve opening. We also want to make sure we are aligning the seam of the sleeve to the seam of our sleeve cuff. And we're going to make sure that we are stretching evenly. You can do the quarter trick again, or you can just do what I do and wing it. I recommend you pin your cuff to your sleeve with at least 4 pins. Once again, we are going to use a stretch stitch or a serger to serge our sleeve cuff on. Again, we're going to be stretching our cuff, but not our sleeve, in order to avoid puckering or wavy seams. Once again, I'm going to tie this off to make sure my serger tails don't come loose. Next, let's work on our waistband. For the waistband, we're going to use the same method as the neckband. Fold the waistband piece in half widthwise, right sides together, pinning the short ends together. And there you go, you have your waistband. Now we're going to do the same method as we did with the neckband. We are going to find our quarter points, both on the waistband and on the bodice, and we'll match them up to pin. Insert the waistband into the bodice, right sides together, aligning the quarter points and raw edges. Pin in place, stretching the waistband slightly to fit. Try not to get your waistband twisted like I did here. With a stretch stitch or a serger, sew your waistband onto your bodice. Again, we're going to stretch our waistband, but not our bodice. Again, tie off your serger tails so they don't come undone. And guess what? The sweater part of our sweater dress is done! Let's turn it right sides out and see what it looks like. Oh my goodness, I am obsessed! Alright, let's get into putting the skirt pieces together. So this is my tier 3 that I'm working on, and I am going to take 2 of my tier 3 pieces and put them right sides together. I'm going to match up the short ends and pin them in place. Again, we're using a stretch stitch or a serger to sew those together. All right, now we are going to make sure that we put these two pieces that we just attached right sides up, and we're going to place another tier 3 piece on top of that, making sure that our right sides are together. And again, we're going to match up those short raw edges and pin. Once again, we are going to put these 3 pieces that we have together right sides up on our table, and we're going to take our final tier 3 piece and put it right sides together with the rest of the pieces that we have sewn. We're going to match up those short raw ends and pin them in place again. Now you should have a long line of 4 tier 3 pieces. So what we want to do is create a loop by attaching those short ends of your very long tier 3. Make sure that they're right sides together and make sure that all of your pieces are facing the same direction and are not twisted. Match up those short ends and pin and sew in place. Now you should have a loop of all of your tier 3 pieces attached. Double check that your pieces are not twisted and that they're all facing the same direction, and that your seam allowances are on the same sides on all pieces. We are now going to do the exact same thing with our tier 2 pieces. So this time we only have 3 pieces that we need to attach, but we need to use the exact same method as we did for the tier 3 pieces. Right sides together, match up the short ends, pin, and sew. Right sides together, match up the short ends, pin, and sew. All right, now we need to make another loop. Make sure that those right sides are together and that your tier is not twisted. Match up those short ends and pin and sew. Your tier 2 should now be a loop. Double check that nothing is twisted and that all seam allowances are on the same side of your loop, the wrong side. Can you guess what we need to do now? That's right, we need to make a loop with our tier 1 pieces. So put those pieces right sides together, match up those short ends, and pin and sew. To make a loop with this tier, all we're going to do is match up those other short sides, pin, and sew. And there you have it. You should have your first tier in a loop with the wrong sides on the same sides. Okay, the next thing we need to do is hem the bottom of our last tier. So that means your tier 3 if you're doing 3 tiers, or your tier 2 if you're only doing 2. I have serged the bottom edge of my tier and I'm folding it up about 1/2 of an inch. I fold it to the wrong side and I pin it all the way around the tier, the entire loop. Now we need to make sure we're using a stretch stitch here. I like to use a length of 2 and a width of 2 for my hemming needs. Make sure you have coordinating thread in your sewing machine, and we are just going to top stitch at about 1/2 of an inch. It's much easier to hem before the ruffling, but if you're not sure about the length, then you can hold off. Now we're going to set our stitch length to a 4, and we're going to turn our attention down to sew some gathering stitches. I'm doing this on my tier 2, but you're going to want to do the bottom-most tier first because it's easier to ruffle from bottom up. When we do a gathering stitch, we do not backstitch and we go all the way around the loop, stopping right before we get to where we started. Now we're going to sew a second gathering stitch about 1/4 of the way down from our first gathering stitch. So I like to use my presser foot as a guide and just make sure that that first gathering stitch lines up with the edge of my sewing foot. Now it's time to gather our tiers. So once again, make sure you are starting with your bottom-most tier. So if you're doing 3 tiers, make sure you start with tier number 3. We're going to find our bobbin threads and we are going to gently slide our fabric along the bobbin threads to create gathers in our fabric. And we're just going to keep sliding that down the fabric as far as we can go, and then we can adjust them once we have all of our gathers done. Here you can see I've already done half of my skirt. So I've already attached half of my tier 2 to my tier 1, and I'm going to show you how I like to do it. I like to first pin my half points. So I pin where I started my gathering stitches, and I pin it to the tier there, and then I find the halfway points and I pin those together. And then when I slide my fabric along those bobbin threads to create the gathers, I know kind of generally how much gathering I have to do. So once I get it kind of approximately the right size, then I can start pinning and making sure my gathers are all even along that edge of my tier 1. Okay, so now I have the gathers approximately about the same width as my tier 1, and I'm going to start pinning a little bit at a time and making sure those gathers are all even all the way along my tier 1. I can see right here there's some that are too tight, and there's some further down toward where I started my gathering stitches that are definitely too loose. So I'm going to have to slide some of those gathers back down where I had gathered them in the first place. To attach our tiers together, we need to use either a serger or a stretch stitch. So here I'm using a serger, and the trick is to make sure that you are sewing right in between those gathering stitches that you made. So this is going to help your gathers stay nice and even and prevent any funny tucks from going on when you are sewing your tiers together. When you're done sewing or serging around your skirt, it should look something like this. And so I'm going to teach you a little trick for getting rid of that ugly gathering stitch that you can see there on the outside of our tier 2. So the trick is to find your bobbin thread and pull it all the way through. So the same way that we did our gathering, we're going to pull that bobbin, sliding the fabric along it the whole way until the bobbin thread comes completely out. This is a much quicker way to get rid of those ugly gathering stitches than having to go back and pick out every single one with your seam ripper. It is such a life hack and I love it so much. So here you can see that my bobbin thread is starting to come out now. The gathers on the other side of the skirt are loosening. And there you have it. So now when I flip it to the right side, I can just pick that gathering stitch right up off of my fabric. Oops. Ta-da! Once you have your third tier on there, you are done your skirt, and we can put some gathering stitches around tier number 1. There we go. We're going to do the same method for attaching to the bodice, but I am going to show you how I do that because it is a super important skill if you're going to be making more dresses in the future. So I have my bodice right sides out and the waistband flipped up toward the neckline. And I am putting my skirt together with it, right sides together, matching up the side seams. And I'm just gonna pin both side seams. Once both side seams are pinned, I'm going to find my bobbin threads as I did when I was attaching our tiers, and I'm going to start gently sliding that fabric along the bobbin threads until it is about the same width as my bodice. So once my skirt is about the same width as my bodice, I'm going to spread out those gathers and make sure they're all even all the way along that bodice. You can see me kind of making sure that they all look like they are gathered the same amount all the way along the bodice there. And then I'm going to stick a pin every couple inches, and then I'll work on the other side. And there you have it, your very own river sweater or hoodie or dress, perfect for any occasion.
And that's it, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and feel confident in creating your own version of this pattern. Don't forget to share your creations with the Sewing Hub community on Facebook or on Instagram. Give us a tag at Sew with the Hub. We love seeing how everyone brings their own kind of flavor and spice to each project. So be sure to check out more patterns from the Simple Life Pattern Company and keep an eye out for more unbelievable fabric and pre-orders from the Fabric Snob. We would love to see all of your creations. So again, don't forget to tag us, and thank you for joining me for this sew along. I will link all of the socials in the caption, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye!